Hey everyone, welcome. This is Matt here. We'll start in just a moment as everyone gets into the webinar. All right, hello. Welcome to Zero to Hero, bringing PWAs into your organization. I am your host, Matt Netko. I'm head of developer relations at Ionic. Thank you so much for joining me today. I've got a really great presentation for you on progressive web apps. I'm easy to find me on Twitter as well as over email. Send me any questions or follow-ups you have. I love hearing from you. Thanks so much. So just a couple housekeeping items to start. Of course, this webinar is being recorded. So the benefit of that is all of you will get a link to the recording and our slides afterwards. The presentation will be about 45 minutes with, a little bit of time leading up to an hour for Q&A. And speaking of Q&A, please be sure to submit your questions at any time during my presentation, and we'll have some time at the end to answer them. There's a little Q&A panel at the side there that you can drop those in. So we've got an action-packed agenda today covering all things progressive web apps, from the basics to things like what problems they solve, a little deep dive into some of the technology and how that works, as well as answering the real questions like, will progressive web apps work for me and my business? Additionally, I have a demo where I show off some PWA features and functionality, and of course we have that Q&A as I mentioned. All right, cool. So let's start with Progressive Web Apps 101. Let's start with the basics, kind of, align what we're talking about today, right? First off, what exactly is a progressive web app? I borrowed this quote from the Google team. I absolutely love it as a great way to kind of just start this off. Essentially, they're websites or web apps that took the right vitamins. And what that essentially means is you're still building a web application or a website and using your fundamentals of web technologies, right? That includes HTML, CSS, JavaScript, etc. But they've been, as in the P in PWA, progressively enhanced to build more modern app-like experiences using web technology. And what we're going to cover, over the next few minutes is what they have, the FIRE acronym, right? So that's fast, installable, reliable, and engaging. So it's about building modern app experiences for your users that are fast. So of course they load quickly. They're installable just like native mobile apps. Your users can add your PWA to their home screen. They're reliable. So they work offline and across all different types of experiences. And of course, they're engaging. You have modern APIs, modern web features that you can build, and they keep your users active with things like push notifications and other techniques to keep them engaged and happy using your software. Additionally, they're discoverable. So because of being built on the web, you have benefits like being accessible through search engines, as well as other different types of app directories or app stores. You get the best of both worlds there. And of course, they're accessible to all by being built with the web. All right. So why progressive web apps? What are some of the experiences and reasons why, from both a business and consumer level, why you'd want to consider building a PWA? Well, the first one comes more from our user consumer perspective, and that's app fatigue. You can find lots of examples out there and lots of stats that demonstrate that, frankly, users are just tired of downloading all of these native mobile apps, right, from the app stores. There's space concerns with their devices, running out of size and space on their devices, as well as just the fatigue around having to download yet another app when they're just trying to get some type of work done or sign up or purchase, right? So there's lots of fatigue around that after we're over 10 plus years into our mobile app experiences of today. And leading into that is the benefit of a PWA. It's essentially a no download experience for your users. So even what you're doing is starting off on the right foot with a better user experience because there isn't an app to download. You can prompt them to install it and get access to it immediately. From the developer standpoint, they love the time savings involved, the ability to move quickly to build and deploy great app experiences for the users. In fact, it was the #1 reason from our recent developer survey that developers said that they were building PWAs was the time and cost savings. And speaking of developers, the whole purpose and awesome benefit of building a PWA is you're leveraging your web talent. So every business, of course, has a website today. And I'm sure you probably have lots of, if nothing else, internal web apps that you're building. So you have a competent web team. With PWAs, you can leverage their talent even more and really get the most out of those types of developers. In terms of the business impacts, well, this is, I talked about why more from the consumer and developer standpoint, why we love PWAs. But the actual, when it comes to ROI of them, it's incredible and very easy to measure. And that's what we're going to look at next. Ultimately, when you build a compelling PWA experience, the end result is that users are going to spend more time on your service. So of course, we know what that means, right? Improved conversion rates, higher revenue, and even better, more returning visitors. So that, of course, we keep that revenue going for a long time to come, and you have repeat customers. And additionally, you have a reduced bounce rate for leads. If you're selling, especially in a shopping or retail sense, you want them to be able to complete their purchase or, complete the job to be done that you want them to do. All right, let's look next at some real-world FIRE examples and case studies. First, we look at F in FIRE, which is fast, right? This one probably the easiest to understand, makes sense just from the word fast, of course. But basically the goal here is that your PWA should load in seconds, not minutes, not 30 seconds, but literally a few seconds, right? And the reason why there is we see that with reducing, the benefit of that is reducing bounce rates. So we see some unfortunate research from the Google team showing that that today the average mobile page load time is 15 seconds or more. And that is, as you can imagine, a very long time. We've all encountered all different types of sites and buying opportunities and experiences that have had really long load times. And we know what happens. We bounce out of that. We say, forget that. We have other things to do, or we get frustrated and we move on. And that, the impact for a business is lost revenue, customer retention, etc. So by building a really fast PWA, you're enabling the ability to, keep your customers engaged and reduce them from bouncing out. In the case study type of the world, why this matters, there's real world impact for building a web app, a PWA that's very fast. Specifically, Walmart and eBay looked at shaving off just 100 milliseconds in improving their load time. And in the case of Walmart, they saw a 1% increase of revenue. And for eBay, their add to cart count, basically the number of products that were added to the cart, increased by 0.5%. Now, those are small numbers, of course, but for whether your business is larger or smaller, that revenue impact is going to be huge by just shaving off some of that load time. And keep in mind, this is just 100 milliseconds multiple times. It's not just a one-time change. So the faster, they proved over time that the faster you make your site, the better it is for your users and your bottom line. The second part of FIRE in the sense of building PWAs is installable. This is really one of my favorite ones. You're essentially opening it up and driving a native app experience and making it accessible to your end users, much like a native app. I'm going to show this in my demo in just a minute here, actually. So the idea here is you're just like a native app that's downloaded from the store. You're able to add the app to the home screen of your user's device, as well as enable that standalone experience that native apps have, such as the app switcher. So when you're toggling every device is different how they do that, but when you're toggling through different apps, you can quickly move between them, and as well as unlock different settings and customization, just like a native app has. When we look at specifically what that means and what that saves, look at towards the bottom example there, where we think about that install process that you'd see today. A user would come to your website and be prompted to install the native app instead. That takes them to and redirects them to the app stores, which then they have to download a large native app, right? And then enter the app, maybe create an account or log in, and then hopefully get back to whatever they were trying to do, right? So you can see there's multiple friction points there where the opportunity for them to bounce out and go on to something else is high. But with a PWA, when they're already using your web-based app that maybe they accessed from a search engine search result or went to your site directly. But there's a few ways to basically prompt them to install your app to keep it on their device. And you can continue on with that conversion funnel or task that they were trying to do. So far less steps, which of course will keep them engaged and more likely to stick with that funnel or whatever you're trying to funnel them to do. In terms of the impact of this and why the installable aspect of PWAs matters, well, as we kind of just showed, higher conversion rates, right? If you get the app onto the device, you're going to have better engagement and more repeat visits. And of course, everyone's favorite way to do that is typically with push notifications or text messages, emails, what have you. But it's an opportunity to re-engage users and bring them back into the app. Really great example from Weekend Desk. There's their PWA prompt there in the lower left corner. They tout how small the app is. It won't take up a lot of space, and it's going to install in 1 second or less. That's pretty compelling, right? So they saw, and they, using that approach, they were able to drive a 2.5x conversion rate from the installed PWA versus just the regular website or app. So really powerful results there. The next part of PWAs that make them really compelling is reliability, right? So how many times have we been using a web-based application or even a native app? It's not really, it's definitely a technology agnostic concept. And how many times have we been using that where we've been moving throughout the real world and we've had lost our cell service or Wi-Fi has gone down, and unfortunately the entire screen goes blank or becomes unresponsive? That's, quite awful, especially when we're in the middle of trying to purchase something or get some work done. It's incredibly frustrating, right? We've all felt that pain. So the idea behind reliability in PWAs is to still be helpful even when you're offline. At a minimum, we suggest building static offline pages. So basically it's the bare minimum, keep that page live on the screen, maybe some light interactivity so that you don't frustrate your users and they don't leave the site that they're currently on. To take it a step forward, though, we recommend being useful. So showing relevant info that you can provide to your users in the context of what they're doing in the real world at the time. So of course, in the context of maybe flying with airlines or taking a train, you might show the boarding pass or the movie ticket that they're about to go see if they're at a theater in person. Or if they're in the middle of shopping, load up their cart and show the items that they've saved already so that it's top of mind. And when they do come back online, hopefully in a few seconds or whatever it takes to move around the real world, they'll have that connectivity restored. They can finish their browsing or whatever task they were trying to complete. And this brings, to account the P in progressive web apps, which is progressive, right? So that really hints at progressive enhancement, which means when we have we're developing our apps and we run into different user devices, or in this case, lower powered user devices or offline scenarios, we want to progressively enhance and still provide a great experience. That's really the gist of PWAs there. I really love what Trivago did in the sense of maintaining engagement until their users came back online and delivering a great user experience. They from one of their business success stories, they noticed that 3% of their users were going offline over time due to unreliable networks. And so what they did is came up with an offline mini game to entertain them. That's pretty awesome. And what that did, it wasn't just for fun and games. What that actually did is drove real impact. 67% of those came back and finished what they were doing, trying to book experiences and flights and things from their site when they came back online. So keeping them engaged, led to this not only great UX, but actual business results there. The last part of FIRE, the part of why we build PWAs and what makes them so compelling, is engagement. Making and driving immersive, engaging app experiences. Today, fortunately, we can do this really easy. The modern web has come such a long way over the past few years, and what this now allows us to do is gives us access to all the native features you pretty much could want, right? So that includes your camera, Bluetooth, geolocation, all different types of hardware sensors, things like that. Basically anything that a native app can do, you can do with a PWA. Additionally, you have the benefit with a PWA of reach. You've got building apps that run on desktop, mobile, basically anywhere a web browser exists, which, let's face it, is everywhere today. So you have that ability to build one experience and leverage it everywhere and meet your users essentially where they're at. Additionally, of course, through search engines, you have that discoverability. Again, you have search results and ability to just launch your user into your experience when they find you organically. And again, re-engage them with push notifications and other techniques to keep them coming back to your app. So the goal with engagement is to use a bunch of different native app techniques, right? Again, that comes from different techniques like push notifications, text messages, what have you. In one retailer's example, they multiplied their conversion rate 4.5x by simply just re-engaging users, I believe with push notifications, driving them back to their abandoned carts. So that's really impactful. Another way to drive more revenue, right? And what I really like this study from Localytics, who actually did the work to measure an average 3-month retention, comparing users who enabled push notifications with those who didn't. And as you can see there is still a steep drop off from 43% to 16% from month 1 to 3, but that's a heck of a lot better than 9 to 4% for those that didn't use push notifications. So ultimately, it's a great technique to use for your PWAs, as we see here. All right, let's cover some more use cases and other examples and go into some specifics here. This one is absolutely my favorite part, and really the why you should consider PWAs is empowering your workforce, your development teams, really the entirety of your business. Why? Because PWAs eliminate traditional delivery roadblocks. When I'm talking about roadblocks, that's a bunch of different things. Primarily, of course, everyone knows the App Store roadblocks. So you have Apple and Google have their App Store requirements, and there's some of their gatekeeping and different steps that and review, like the App Store review process that you have to go through to release the software. Those are fine, but of course, if you want to ship quickly, innovate quickly today, you need to go faster, right? So PWAs allow you. There's no gatekeeper. You're able to just build and deploy something that lives on the web and runs in a web browser. So you really can't beat that. Additionally, there's other things like politics, right? There's, especially on larger teams, there's all different types of project management and other KPIs to worry about. What's great about a PWA is you can simply just start a POC, create a prototype, and get to work. Start building and start proving out your idea or whatever your project needs to do. And then from there, you'll have something. By the time everything aligns right, from timelines, etc., you'll have something that's great and ready to go for your user base. And additionally, when we think about there's really great way, the best way to build internal apps are PWAs, because you don't have any means to go through the app stores. You don't need to do that. You can just simply build different web apps and sites and deploy them internally to your employees or even contractors. The split there between employees and contractors is really interesting too. You might have different, depending on the size of your company, you might have different needs, different requirements to segment different functionality or turn off and on different auditing or different features. So PWAs allow you to build little mini app experiences, which I'll talk about next, that give you all different types of control around who gets access to what data and things like that. On the retail and consumer app side, I know I'm a fan of this one myself. We all have experience this day to day with our shopping, right? The idea behind building a PWA is that this allows you to build the fastest checkout experiences possible, right? In my example here, I was looking for a Batman face mask recently. We're all buying up face masks. I wanted to build something a little bit more, not build, but buy something a little bit more fun. So what did I do? I turned to the web and I went on a search engine, searched for those, and found a site that was a PWA, and then purchased it. It was that simple. There was just 1, 2, 3, done. I didn't have to install a native app. I didn't drop off through any of that process, creating an account, all that kind of thing. So imagine if you're building a PWA, especially for shopping experiences, your users will find you organically. They'll find exactly what they want, and they can go through that conversion funnel, whatever that looks like for you. And why this matters is we know that 50% of smartphone users are more likely to use your mobile site when browsing or shopping. Because again, we don't want to download an app. You just want to get through and complete your purchase as fast as possible. Another favorite one of mine, great use case to think about that spans all different types of industries is low bandwidth scenarios. So again, even though we've got fiber coming across around the world, we've got great satellite internet and all these types of innovative 5G type of experiences that'll be coming soon. The reality is that we'll always need to account for offline situations. As we think about mobility, so moving through the real world, we've got public transit and trains and tunnels that you go through. Concrete buildings, of course, will always have Wi-Fi and or cell service issues. And think about when we get back to them someday, sports arenas where you have tens of thousands of people on site at once. You've probably experienced that, where your cell service is basically non-existent. So you need to be able to still, of course, interact with your mobile device, especially in those type of areas as you move through the world. So designing and delivering powerful offline experiences is a must, and PWAs can help with that. Another example, there's so many, right, of where you'd run into low bandwidth scenarios is when you're in construction on job sites or having to manage different types of orders or workflows. One internet example I experienced is I was getting fiber internet, which I'm using right now, of course, to present to you, getting that set up in my home, and I had a technician come with his iPad, and he was using a progressive web app to still, as he moved throughout my backyard to set up some of the fiber and the power lines, to my basement, which had kind of shoddy cell service, to going upstairs where I had a little bit better coverage. But moving through all these different types of scenarios, he was able to pull up my customer account and still take notes that were later resynced to the cloud once he came back online. So he didn't have to worry about connecting to my internet or having any cell service. That was something that was really neat to see. His work wasn't interrupted, and he was able to give me a really quick installation and smooth install process. So I really love that. Another example, and why PWAs are so important, are providing, and what they unlock for you as a business is providing frictionless experiences. Think of these as the ability to build modern mini apps too, rather than tack on new features to a long-running legacy app. You might just be able to spin up a PWA that can handle a really specific experience. Here's another example, again, that I experienced myself when I was traveling. I was in a new city and, of course, was driving around and needed to park so I could go and do some shopping or go to a restaurant, what have you. What I loved about this was the parking meter had a simple QR code on the meter. I needed to pay for my spot, of course. I was an out-of-towner, needed to pay. And so I scanned that QR code, which brought up the PWA. It was a simple site, no fluff, nothing to really get bogged down in terms of large images to download or other types of things like that, or marketing. And I was able to register and pay right on the spot. So just simply register my credit card, name, and the spot I wanted. And that was it. I was able to go about my day without having to download a native app. In low cell service situations or things like that. And additionally, when I had 10 minutes or 5 minutes on the meter left, I was notified with a push notification, and I was given the option within that PWA to add more time onto the meter, all remotely. I didn't have to go back to it because of course I was shopping or I was doing something else. I didn't want to, that ability to not be forced to go back to the meter was really great. So that's just one example of many of building a frictionless experience that you can do for your users. So love that one. All right. Next, let's look at, before we get into the demo here, let's look at PWA technology. There's only a handful of parts that allow you to, as we say, adopt the right and inject the right vitamins into your web app. How specifically PWAs work, there's three main elements and aspects of them: service workers, web app manifests, and secure HTTPS. The first one is service workers. Think of these as a proxy for the network. So the idea behind this is a separate file that you code up and lives alongside your PWA. And what this does is it intercepts inbound and outbound data. It's separate from your app. So it's looking at network requests coming in and out. So that's loading the site itself, as well as any API or web service calls you make out to retrieve data or push data out. So what this does is, as a simple layer, the kind of main benefits here are you adopt different caching strategies for your images, your site content, and then of course the code of the site itself, like JavaScript and CSS style sheets. And what this does is it enables those offline features, because when it happens is when a site is requested to be loaded or new data is returned, you can return cache data if you're offline, or there's other different types of strategies to get fresh data or serve up stale data, depending on what the scenario is. Additionally, these enable push notifications. It's part of kind of just built into that. There's some configuration to do there to allow those to happen with PWAs. The next step is the web app manifest. So think of this as just a simple JSON-based configuration file that defines your PWA's metadata. It tells Apple or Android, iOS or Android, what to do with your PWA, and lets it know that it is in fact a PWA. Here, there's just a few simple elements. On the right there, I've got an image of what a sample app manifest would look like. You've got the name and description, of course, and then some theming background colors. So when you install the app icon on your home screen, you can adjust some of those colors, as well as the display experience. So is it going to run within the full screen or some other standalone different types of options there? And there's the icon. So of course, there's a variety of image icons when it gets added to the home screen. You want to define the right dimensions for that. So really straightforward. This is a very easy file to create and manage. And last, there's the secure aspect of PWAs that make them a web app, a PWA. So the idea here is enabling safety by default. So PWAs must be sandboxed through HTTPS. They must be secure connections. And what that allows is it enables us to build those rich features and use modern web APIs that I'm going to show off a couple in a second here. So that includes things like audio, video, and real-time communication, as well as different operating system access that you typically see in a native app, like accessing files, again, working offline and doing offline storage, as well as managing network requests in and out. Additionally, there's a lot of future work being done by teams at Google, Microsoft, and Intel now. They have this web capabilities project that is going to be underway for the near future. And basically, that's the goal of that project, is to close the gap on any other modern web APIs like web payments and probably some authentication stuff in there too. So the future of building on the web and building PWAs is bright. There's a lot of great folks that are collaborating to make this experience even better. Speaking of kind of the more technical aspect and some PWA tips, some advice that we've got, building from the Ionic team, building lots of PWAs ourselves. I just wanted to share some quick tips here. The first one being, again, because of the lack of gatekeepers, no app stores, really just deploying something that runs in a web browser, just remember that it's fast to prototype these. So my main advice is to just start building. Don't get bogged down by too much prototyping. Just get to work and start building out that idea that you've got. And when you do that, you can start with an app template. So lots of great services, Ionic, of course, too, which is what I'm linking there. When you get the presentation, you can see that. Lots of great services offer up app templates that are pre-configured, essentially pre-configured PWAs that you can download and customize to your heart's liking. So don't start from scratch. All of the things like, as I mentioned, the app manifest, some of these can be auto-generated for you and managed quite easily with templates. So really love that as kind of a secret weapon to get started. And speaking of that, we really recommend that you don't write your own service worker. They can, again, those are the caching strategies and other things that interact with the network. It can be a little tricky to work with, admittedly. So but fortunately, you have libraries like Workbox, which is from Google, that abstracts a lot of the more complex challenges of working with service workers. So I highly recommend that one. Again, that would come usually pre-configured in an app template, so that you're off to the races pretty fast. Additionally, the mentality of a PWA, again, is to build something that's fast and engaging. That's very high level. That means a lot of different things, especially on the performance side of the house. So, and every site's going to be different in terms of what they need to tweak for great performance. Fortunately, there's the Lighthouse tool or the web.dev website that offers a lot of great tips, as well as the ability to you can point their tools at your PWA, and it'll give you a full audit of things like SEO performance, app performance, accessibility, and other types of metrics that you can, and as well as helpful tips that help you improve on those. So really, really recommend those for building great PWAs. All right, are PWAs right for you? You've heard all this great information about them. Hopefully you're bought in, but there's still probably some lingering questions you have. And again, please leave your questions off on the side for Q&A. So when it comes to evaluating your app backlog strategy, how you have all these apps that you have to build, I'm sure this year and going into 2021, right? So how do you get all those apps built and your users satisfied, your KPIs accomplished, etc.? Should you build a PWA, a mobile app, or maybe both? And as you might groan to hear this, but the reality is it really depends on what your goals are, right? As a business, everyone is going to be a little bit different. But I would encourage you to remember the main goal of a PWA, or really delivering any type of software, and it should be delivering a compelling user experience. So ultimately, however you accomplish that, if it's with a PWA or a native mobile app, or with both, that's really what matters, is delighting your users so that they come back to your service and use you over and over. One couple of things to think about, though, are your user base. So what is your primary user base? Are they naturally, a PWA is great if they're coming from web traffic already, or if you primarily have a web presence, it's best to expand on that, of course, right? Build a PWA for that. If your users are already mobile app and app store friendly or aware of that, then a native mobile app is fine for that as well. Additionally, if you have a high bounce rate, so if you're kind of more of a content site or building a shopping retail experience, you might be worried about inbound leads and inbound traffic. So if you have a high bounce rate, you're going to want to build a PWA, because that enables higher search engine rankings, as well as more the ability to reduce bounce rates by keeping your users engaged with, using some of those features we talked about, the modern app features. And last, think about what you're optimizing for. Is it speed? So, delivering features fast, especially on the web side, that's where the web wins, the ability to ship features fast and innovate quickly. Or are you more leaning towards pixel perfection, meaning you're building a mobile game or some kind of experience that really requires native app tuning. It has to be in discoverable in the App Store, and it must be highly tailored or use hardware device features that the web doesn't have access to. Then in that case, then that makes sense to build a native mobile app. There is, so all the benefits I've touted with PWAs, you're probably wondering again about some drawbacks and where they might kind of fall over today. And fortunately, it's only a handful of a couple things to point out, but they are not a universal replacement for all app technology. So kind of some critical areas to look out for. The main one, of course, is security. So mobile device management and data loss prevention solutions. So those are essentially additional software that can wrap around a native app and provide security and data access abilities. So think about where if you have employees leaving a company, or your company data is unfortunately accessed illegally, or you run into those different types of situations, those MDM and DLP solutions allow you to either wipe a user's device entirely or remove that mobile app and thus secure your data from those devices. So that's something that PWAs do not have access to. You have to build a native mobile app for those type of solutions. So that's one. If security is critical, or you have extremely sensitive data that cannot leak on a user's device, then a PWA may not be right for you. Additionally, there is a bunch of authentication features and hardware features that aren't available, such as fingerprint scanning or biometrics. So biometrics means Face ID, fingerprint unlock. Those types of features are only available with native mobile apps. And then we've got critical native features. So primarily, again, most everything is available on the web today, but there might be some features. The kind of one that everyone points out is push notifications on iOS. Those are not feasible today, and we don't know when Apple is going to add support for that. So if that's an absolute must, you might want to look at building a native mobile app instead. All right. So now let's get into a live demo. I've got a great app I'm going to show off here and show off some of the PWA features. So this is Ionifits. This is a human resources type app that we've built. It's a PWA that shows off a variety of the Ionic app platforms, different types of features. And so speaking of that story where I talked about the parking meter, I thought I'd do something fun this time around with this. So you'll see here on the right, I've got a QR code. So if you want to follow along with this demo and see and play with the app on your device itself, see what the real deal is with these PWAs. Are they as compelling and interesting and fast to use as I'm touting here, right? You can do that. So I encourage you right now, I'm going to pause for a minute for a second and open up your device's camera, just the camera app, and hold it over that QR code. What should happen is it will open up a link. Tap on that link, and that'll direct you into the Ionifits app, which is at ionifits.ionicframework.com. And so I'll pause on that for a second, and then we'll let you try that. And all of this is open source and available, so if you can't get to it right now, that's fine. We'll show that off anyway. So I'm going to pop over to some of my code here, as well as my app. All right. Okay, so on the left here is Ionifits running on my Android device, and there's just a few interesting callouts I want to do. On the right is the code itself. Again, this is open source. You can take a look at this later, send it to your development team, and check that out. So this is my login screen, of course. Welcome to Ionifits. And just some things to point out. So we're using the open source Ionic Framework UI Component Toolkit, which is over 100 UI components that are pre-built for mobile especially. You've got all different types of native transitions, animations for mobile already built in. So you can focus on just building the app experience that you want. You don't have to recreate the native look and feel of applications for iOS and Android. It's really great. Just a couple things to add. This is the HTML side of it. This happens to be an Angular-based app, but you can use Ionic Framework with any any web framework or none at all with regular JavaScript too. I'm using over here, I've got a card component to kind of build a pretty looking login box with some login buttons. So this is anything prefixed with Ion is our component. So it's just simple HTML. You don't really learn Ionic framework. You just use web technology like you're used to. So really great stuff there. Over here in the left, you'll notice this prompt to add Ionifits to the home screen. So that is actually the PWA aspect of installing that like a native app, the installable part of the Fire aspect of PWAs that we talked about before. Now, traditionally, what you'd want to do is have this prompt pop up after your users added something to their shopping cart or completed some type of task that shows and demonstrates their interest in your app, not right away. But for the purpose of this demo, I have it prompt here on the home screen just to show you. So let's actually do that. I'm going to tap Add Ionifits to home screen. So this gives you a nice little prompt there. This is on Android. And it's adding it. And if I close out here, let's see if it'll add there. Oh, there it is. Just took a second. So you saw it popped up on the home screen. So again, next to Twitter, next to any of my other native apps, essentially to the end user's experience, this is the app. So let's open that up. Cool. So and as you see, we're in a home screen. I'm using the full standalone experience. So again, at the end of the day, yes, it's a web-based app, but it might as well be a regular native one. And I'm going to log in. I'm going to skip the login process for now and kind of just show off of some of the features of the app and really what building modern app experiences, what Ionic looks like. So here I have a couple things. I have my employee directory, which lists thousands of different employees info that I can look up, and I can quickly and easily scroll through this at really high performance. Additionally, I can tap on an employee, and you see how fast and smooth that is. There's all this different animation and gestures that are built into that, which you use and unlock with Ionic Framework. And then I'm going to look at the expenses page to kind of round that out. So what I'm doing here is, think about how if you're traveling around or you have an office expense, you want your company to reimburse you, well, you could do that with this screen. So I'm going to tap the little icon there. We're going to add an expense. I'm going to expense my lunch from my grocery store the other day. So that was $6.99. Then I can select a category. Let's call that office expense. And then, I'm not going to get reimbursed for this, though, from corporate unless I, show proof or upload a receipt that I actually bought this. So let's do that. So I'm going to tap the camera icon here. And there's me. And take a picture of my receipt. Cool. And select that. So then I can add that. And look at that. We've got a completed expense. So this is an example. I'll tap back into that to kind of show the receipt a little bit there. And let's look at some code briefly. So what's great about that is we're using built-in modern web APIs, such as accessing the file system to store that image on the device, and the camera, of course, which is all easily accessible today with web developers and PWAs, to take and capture that expense receipt. So what I'm doing there, I happen to be using Capacitor, which is Ionic's native runtime tool that not only provides easier access to these modern web APIs in a cross-platform fashion so that they run on the web as well as iOS and Android, it allows you also to take your PWA and bundle that and deploy it to the app stores. So that's a little outside of the context of this presentation. We've got lots of info on that you can look up in other webinars I've done for that. But needless to say, that's a wonderful tool for reusing the same code across multiple platforms. And if we try to, kind of hone in here for my capture expense receipt code, what happens when I click that button is this is firing off, and it's simply using a single API that's cross-platform to open the camera on the device, retrieve a high-quality photo, and then use that and display it on the screen and save it. So you'll notice here, really the main thing to call out is that we're not mentioning the web or Android or iOS. It's simply camera.getPhoto, and that works in a cross-platform all the details abstracted away from me from the native side as a web developer. So really powerful stuff, absolutely incredible, and allows us to build these compelling experiences that work all on the web. So that was the install experience on and what that looks like on Android. I'm going to next quickly show a video here. Because I'm on a Windows PC, I can't easily connect my iOS device, but here is Ionifit's running on iOS, and let's see what that looks like. So it's a little, if you look down in the bottom, it's a little more challenging to add the app to the home screen on iOS. At the very bottom, there's that share icon that I'll touch. And you have to scroll up a little bit, and in the middle of the screen there, tap Add to Home Screen. It's only a couple taps, though, and there we go. It's added to the home screen up here. So then I can launch it like I did on Android and then get right into the app and have the same great experience. So that is a little bit, you don't have the ability to prompt a user like we did on Android, but it still is very feasible and relatively straightforward to add that on iOS. So there we go. Let's take a look. Cool. So that was our Ionifit's demo, demonstrating our, mobile native quality UI components from Ionic Framework, as well as some of the native functionality that Capacitor and the modern web enable. So again, this app runs on the web, iOS and Android, all from one code base. So, and the code's open source, so you can check it out on GitHub and scan that QR code if you want to check it out on your device. Let me know what you think. So that's our demo. So let's kind of, wrap things up again, leave some questions for me on the side. But if we want to take a look at, let's take a look next at what it takes to build a PWA with Ionic. So what's great about Ionic and our platform is that it offers everything you need to build, secure, and deliver a PWA. We showed off Ionic Framework. Here's some more of those components on the right there. That's our award-winning mobile UI library. Works great across mobile, desktop, and beyond for reusable components. So you can focus on just building the core logic and business logic of your app. And then we've got Capacitor, which is our cross-platform runtime that enables access to all the native features, native app features and performance you could ever need. So that's a newer tool from us. Check that out. And additionally, again, outside the scope of the presentation, but we've got AppFlow, which is our mobile DevOps platform. So if you're building lots and lots of PWAs or mobile apps and you need to, manage them from basically idea to app store, AppFlow is the mobile DevOps platform that you should check out. And for teams that are looking that are building lots and lots of apps, and especially on mobile, as you are probably aware, with all different types of OS updates, bugs and features coming out, you really, for those teams that are looking for something that's secure and reliable, a foundation for teams that are building mission critical apps, we've got Ionic Enterprise. So this is our premium supported native solutions and plugins, offerings around security, single sign-on, things like that, as well as mission critical support and native guidance so that you can build the app experiences that you really will delight your users, all maintained by a team that you trust, one that lives and breathes mobile development and PWA development. That's Ionic. So give it a look-see at ionicframework.com/enterprise. And last, before we get into Q&A, here's a couple ways to get started. So start building a PWA or learn more. We've got lots of information. If you head to ionicframework.com/start, you can build your first app. We have a wonderful multi-step, just a handful of clicks to build your first app in PWA. That's our wizard tool there. So just head on to framework.com/start. And if you're looking to learn, and really invest more into the guts and details of what a PWA is and the technology behind it, check out ionicframework.com/PWA. We have tons of resources, case studies we've linked to, all sorts of goodies like that. And for those that are looking again for more of a summary resource beyond this webinar, we actually have a PWA Architect's Guide white paper. Check out that under our resources there on the site. And of course, again, if you're a team building mission critical apps and you need enterprise or commercial support and solutions, check out ionicframework.com/enterprise. Great. Well, again, my name is Matt Netco. Thank you so much for joining me. Let's get over into some questions now. Let's see. All right. Hello. This is, you can actually see me now. That's awesome. I'm going to, let's see, pull up some questions. Okay. All right. All right. So, okay, first couple questions here rolling in. Thank you, everyone. So first one is around Apple's support of PWA. So as I had mentioned, push notifications with Safari, which is iOS's web browser of choice on Apple devices, are not supported and things like that. So, what's kind of Apple's stance on that? Do they support PWAs or not? The one thing I'll say is they definitely, compared to Android and Google, have been a little slower in terms of adopting PWA features. There's some, it's hard to know for sure. There's some question around App Store and guarding sort of their App Store revenues, if that's an intentional move to limit support of PWAs. That is definitely up for debate. What's nice, though, is that Apple has, albeit slower than Android, they have demonstrated a commitment to improving PWA support over time. So the majority of features are there today. I would recommend not letting that hold you back from building PWAs. Again, in the standpoint of something missing like push notifications, oftentimes there's alternative approaches or different tech you can use to still kind of fill in those features. Excuse me. One example would be with push notifications. Instead of sending that, you could send a text message to a user, which, if you think about it, is basically the equivalent of a push notification. It's going right to their mobile device. You can send a text message and link back into your PWA, and that'll open the app right on their device if it's installed. So that's the biggest headache that a lot of developers complain about, but honestly, not as big of an issue as you might think. Let's see what else. How does Ionic and the Ionic ecosystem fit in with PWA support? Oh, okay. So I think, how do the features get built? Do we build them, some of them for you? Things like that. So what Ionic does is we in newer versions of our framework tooling, with our support for Angular, Vue, React, no framework, web framework at all, we actually have been leaning more towards embracing each different web tooling, each framework's web tooling and features like that, which allows basically for your developers, they're going to be using the existing tools that they're used to, and there's way less. It's less for us to maintain, but it's also less for your developers to have to learn and manage. So it's a win-win across the board. What that practically means for PWAs is we actually direct you through that app wizard tool I talked about, or using our CLI, our command line tool. We'll generate and use those specific frameworks tooling to create the PWA features that you want or need. So that would be, again, the web app manifest and a service worker. So how those different frameworks like Angular tackle that is a broader discussion, but what's great is from really just one command, you can add and integrate PWA features into your app. So it's never been easier to augment an existing website or app and create that as a PWA. So really, really straightforward stuff. And all right, I think we have time for maybe one more. How does Capacitor work? So, okay, that's okay, in the context of, okay, so how does Capacitor work in the context of PWAs? What does that give you? So all of the PWA features, like using the camera or geolocation, things like that, those APIs are built into modern web browsers today and have been around for years now and are constantly improving every day. What Capacitor does, which is our native runtime, a newer tool, sort of like a spiritual successor to Cordova, if you've used that in the past to deploy web apps to mobile, iOS and Android stores, is that what that essentially does is twofold. Is it, again, allows you to deploy to those different, like wrap your app into a native mobile app and deploy it to the app stores. but it also enables and extends some of the built-in web modern API capabilities like the camera, and provides that nice experience. So for example, with the camera, as we showed, we had that nice experience where I provided a button, an ability to turn the camera around. That's part of what Capacitor is doing, providing that UI layer on top. So it's all about making, smoothing out some of the web APIs to make them even easier to use than they already are. That's really the goal of our experience. And as you saw from the camera method there, it'll run on all three platforms plus, which is the web, iOS, and Android, without having to change the code, without writing complex code to juggle different platform-specific logic. It all just works. So it's all built in for you. That's kind of the goal there. So, all right. Cool. Well, thank you again. I'm Matt Netko, part of our developer relations team. Thank you so much for joining me in our Zero to Hero PWA presentation. I hope you'll consider bringing PWAs into your organization. And again, please reach out to us, devrel@ionic.io, for any information or further questions. Thank you for joining me. Until next time.